New York State Senator Robert G. Ort has served as mayor of North Tonawanda, city treasurer, and then clerk treasurer of North Tonawanda. Senator Ort enlisted in the New York Army National Guard in October 2001 in direct response to the attacks on September 11th. He is a veteran of Operation Enduring Freedom in Afghanistan. He is the recipient of the Bronze Star, the Army Commendation Medal, the Afghan Campaign Medal, and the Combat Infantry's badge in recognition of his service. Senator Ort currently chairs the Committee on Mental Health and Developmental Disabilities. He also serves on committees on Veterans, Homeland Security, and Military Affairs, Energy and Telecommunications, Local Government, Higher Education, Environmental Conservation, Authorities and Commissions, Civil Service, and Pensions. Please welcome Senator Robert Ort.
Good evening. So I think the takeaway there is I serve on a lot of committees, but it's great to be here with you tonight. I want to thank the folks at United Shoreline for hosting these rallies. This is the second rally that I've been at, that I've had the privilege of speaking at. I was at, it might have been the first rally or one of the early ones out in Oak Orchard Beach out there, and there was probably, when I arrived, it looked like we were going to a rock concert. I mean, there had to be 200 plus people there, and I thought, wow. But you know what? This is a real big issue. And the challenging thing is that for a number of folks, if you don't live in a lakefront community or on the lake, it's almost like it's not happening or it's happening in the background. So we have to be louder, we have to be persistent, and we have to make sure we're getting our message out. So I want to thank the folks who at United Shoreline for organizing and helping to do just that. Because without groups like this, it would be that much harder to get this message out and make sure we get the changes and get what we need, the assistance we need on our lakefront. I also want to thank the members of the media who are here. Now, I don't always thank the members of the media, but I'm glad they're here tonight because if they're not here covering it, again, it's not like it's happening. So the fact that they're here covering this will drive that story home to a host of our neighbors and friends and constituents around Western New York when they're watching the news tonight. But I wanted to talk about two items. One is the IJC. Now, the IJC, I think, is indicative of a larger issue that we have facing our state and facing our country. And that's the increasing marginalization of rural America, rural communities, and people who, by the way, live on the lake, people who live in and around nature. And we're often told by people who live in concrete and glass structures how to best take care of our natural resources. Now, these are people who have filled in every stream, bulldozed every hill, but they know best on how to take care of our natural resources. And I just find that sometimes very hypocritical, and sometimes it doesn't make any sense on the ground level. Because they're coming up with plans like 2014 from a 30,000 foot level, from a very academic perspective, and they're giving a lot of credence to the tadpole or to the frog or whatever else. And I'm not trying to minimize that, but I always don't feel that they give the same credence to the property owner, the taxpayer, and the person who's invested in these properties for many, many years. I always say, you can applaud at any time during the day. Don't be shy. But the other aspect of this is, so yes, we need to take care of our environment, but again, who is looking out for you? How many folks here, this was their dream home on the lake? Or you invested maybe your life savings into this home. And now, and in when Plan 2014 was being debated, and I can tell you there's a number of folks who are here tonight, local elected officials. When I first ran for the Senate and got elected in 2014, they came to me. Of course, I had been mayor of North Tonawanda, and so like many people, I had never heard of Plan 2014. And they told me all about Plan 2014. And I learned about it. I was out at Fort Niagara. We had a hearing there. We had a forum there. And there were trips down to Washington, D.C. I know Congressman Collins has a representative here tonight, and my office has worked with him for months, for years, on this plan. First on trying to stop it. And for years we said, if this plan was instituted, there would be significant damage to lakefront communities just like Wilson. And in fact, in their own plan, they say there will be damage. Apparently, that was just collateral damage. They didn't care enough. They acknowledged there was going to be damage, and they estimated like $20 million was their estimate, which you know that means it's low. Because when governments give you estimates, they're always wrong. And so they estimated $20 million in damage. And where is that money going to come from? If we have a new baseline, because right now the lake is still, I would say, more than a foot, probably, over the seasonal average. Now, if it doesn't go down before the freeze-thaw cycle hits, next rainy season, now we're starting even higher though. So we're looking at a new normal. And it's a bad new normal for every lakefront owner out there. Where is the IGC? I'll tell you where half of them are. They resigned.
Yeah.
Which is a good thing. But that's why it's important that our federal representatives, Congressman Collins in this area, Senator Schumer, Senator Gillibrand, and the President appoint new members to that board. Because we can't fix the plan, we can't get a new plan with half the body. There has to be a full body. And it would be nice to have someone on the board that maybe, I don't know, how do I want to put it, has lived along the lake, one of the Great Lakes. Or maybe someone that has specific experience with Lake Ontario. I think one of the members was from Montana, one of the members from Colorado. Now those are great places. I've been to one of them, but I don't know how much those folks know about the Great Lakes, or about Lake Ontario specifically, or how much they care, because they put this plan together and they don't have to live with the consequences like you do. So, what we're looking at is the federal government, I believe, needs to sink Plan 2014 and come up with a new plan on how to regulate one of our best natural resources. And keep in mind, how much fishing is on Lake Ontario? Keep in mind the economic impact Lake Ontario has to Wilson, to Niagara County, to Orleans County, to Monroe County. And this is going to have a lasting impact on the economies of these towns and these communities. And that's wrong. You know, maybe in New York City, Manhattan, they don't care. But I can tell you this, there's a lot of money that goes into New York State coffers, by the way, as a result of Lake Ontario. And so we need to protect it. As members of this community, we need to defend it. And I think we start by doing that by advocating to our federal representatives, first of all, for new members on the IGC, for the sinking of Plan 2014. And if we don't get that, where's the money going to come from for all the damages that Plan 2014 acknowledges are going to happen? Because who's going to rebuild our shoreline? Who's going to build new docks? Who's going to build new break walls to deal with the new, what I call the new normal, or the new baseline for the lake level? I guess they're just assuming that we're going to do it. You're going to do it. The town of Wilson's going to do it. Well, I can tell you right now, having been a local mayor, they don't have the money to do that. You are going to run out of money to do that. Now, fortunately, the state, and I will say this, and one of my colleagues from the Assembly is here, and I'm going to exclude him from this statement. He'll explain why. But for the Senate, there might not be a dollar appropriated from New York State, because much of the Assembly is from New York City. They've probably never even seen Lake Ontario. The Senate, now in fairness, the Senate passed $90 million in relief monies. The Assembly, to their credit, followed suit. The governor didn't like $90 million. And we were left with either negotiating another number or leaving there with no money. Now I felt, even though I believe 90 was the better number, I thought 0 was also the worst number. So we got out of there with $55 million, $45 million of which is to Lake Ontario flood relief. And the governor said, and I believe he said it when he was here in Wilson, and he signed legislation, that if there was more funding needed, then he would get that funding. Well, I'm going to tell you right now, based on what I'm seeing from the calls in my office and the applications, guess what? There's going to be more funding needed. And we already passed 90, so I'm happy to work with the governor. I know my colleague in the Assembly is happy to work with the governor to make sure we get however much funding we need to bring assistance and some relief to every Lake Ontario property owner who's been affected by this flooding. So. I'll get to your question in just a moment. You very kindly raised your hand, so I'll get right there. So again, that's the state side. There's applications here. I would encourage anyone who is not, there is a time crunch on this. This is not sort of forever. I believe we have to the end of the month, essentially, to get these in. So get whatever you can get in before the end of the month. Now, my understanding, the groups who are administering the funding, I think it's Niagara Falls Redevelopment or Niagara Falls Housing in Niagara County. I forget the actual title. I can tell you this, it has nothing to do with the city of Niagara Falls. It's simply, that's the title of it. So it's not a Niagara Falls location or a not-for-profit. But they're administering the funding, and it's Pat Stone in Orleans County. Now, they're handling that administration. However, what they're trying to do is get all of the applications in and then grade them before they hand the money out. Because what they're trying to do is make sure that the folks who have been hit the hardest get that precedence in line. If it's a first come, first serve, conceivably you could have somebody who's very deserving left on the outside, right? So that's what they're trying to do. So any delay, that's probably the cause of a lot of that delay right now. But ultimately, my office, your Assemblyman's office, we want to know, especially as we get later in the year here, if you're told there's no more funding left, or if you feel you're getting the runaround, contact my office. We're happy to call over to those agencies and see what we can do in light of fire under somebody's butt if we have to. And I have staff that does that today. We're taking calls already, and we're happy to do that on your behalf. But again, the IJC, right now it's pretty much all Canadian. So it's incumbent upon the President and I would go, I've been working through Congressman Collins' office, through Senator Gillibrand's office and Schumer's office, to make sure the President understands he's got to put new people on that IJC. It's incumbent upon him to do that, and the only way we get better people on there, that's going to lead to a better result. But again, I really believe that this is indicative of a larger issue, of a divide, and I see it in Albany all the time, and I see it when I watch the news. The divide in the state and the country increasingly seems to be, in part, a divide between rural and urban, big cities and rural communities. And we have to make sure that these folks know, whatever their best intentions may be, that we're here, we matter, we pay taxes, we're part of this country, this state as well, and we're going to defend our way of life and our homes and our property as well. So I thank you for having me, and I'm going to take your question.
I was just wondering what will happen if the funds, the money is available for helping these folks out, and we're obviously in the minority compared to the whole population.
Sure.
Will if they don't get the money allocated to them to fix their property, say this happens next year again, we have a high water level, is this going to happen all over again? So we're going to be applying for more money? Or what?
Well, that's what I got to go, folks. Not looking. That's a tough question, right? Your core question for those that couldn't hear is, what if this happens again next year? Are we going to have to go through, reapply for money next year? The challenge is right now, we had to appropriate this money, so there is no New York State FEMA, right? There is no such thing at the state level. So we had to appropriate this money through special legislation for this relief. So we would have to appropriate it again next year. Now, there's no guarantee that A would happen, that it would be the same amount. And what if that happened 5 years in a row? So that's why I do think, I'm proud that the state did step up, and I'm happy to encourage the state to step up to the full 90 million that we initially approved. But at some level, this was a federally chartered body. And they said in their own plan that they were going to do damage, and there was going to be a cost to that. So to me, at some point, there's got to be some federal dollars to address this. If it just falls to the state or the locality, I mean, you know, I can tell you, the town of Wilson, it doesn't happen. There's just no way. And they're taking losses on the economic side, which they will not probably realize until later this year. You know, with lower sales tax, because your spring was just wiped out, as was a lot of lakefront communities. And by the way, if your assessments, if they go down, and maybe rightfully so, that means less tax revenue for the town, which could mean a cut in services. I mean, this, you know, there's a reaction to all these things. You all know that. People are nodding because you're smart. You've been through enough budgets and enough things, and you've seen things happen. So this is not, and I tell people that, whether it's in Washington or the press, this is not about, Plan 2014 is not about 2017. This is going to be a potentially long-term problem that we have to address and get our hands around. And the only way we can do that is all levels of government, DC, Albany, and locally, stepping up and working together. And I want to give a big shout out and a thank you to our emergency management teams here in Niagara County, who did a fantastic job, and our National Guardsmen as well. You know, they don't get to pick, right? They have to respond to the disasters. Our National Guardsmen were out there filling sandbags, and I can tell you, I have filled a sandbag in my life when I was in the Army National Guard. There's really no glorious way to do it, right? It's kind of a thing you just have to do. But they were out there, they were doing it. Many of them were from different areas or different communities, and they were doing it because it's the right thing to do. It was their mission. And you know, those are the real heroes when something like this strikes. And I certainly want to think of them, and I think of our fellow Americans down in Florida as they brace for what's going to be probably a pretty big disaster as well with the hurricanes coming. So I want to thank you. I want to thank you, United Shoreline. If anyone has a question for me, I have another event, but I will linger in the hallway. If you have a quick question, I'm happy to try to answer that for you. But I know we have other speakers as well, and I don't want to take up all of their time. So thank you very much for being here. God bless you.